This is Jail Talk, the official podcast of the Texas Jail Association. Here is your host, Aimee Crockett.
Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Aimee Crockett, and I'm here with Karen Ranus. Karen, I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, I am the Trauma-Informed Program Administrator for the Travis County Sheriff's Office. It's a brand new position. I've been in the role, in January it'll be 3 years.
Okay.
So it's a brand new position for the Sheriff's Office. And I'm the lucky person that got to actually launch all of these initiatives and stuff that we're doing around this. My previous experience is in nonprofit.
Okay.
So it was the first time for me stepping into a governmental agency and then definitely a law enforcement corrections agency.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you're not in law enforcement.
No,
okay.
I am not. However, in the previous work that I did, I worked for the National Alliance on Mental Illness. I was there. I worked in that field as their executive director for about almost a decade.
Okay.
And in that time, I got to know the sheriff and got to know a lot of Travis County Sheriff's officers and was really impressed. And so when the opportunity came up to help launch this new initiative, I got really excited about the possibility. I had transitioned already out of my role and hadn't anticipated that I was going to go back to nonprofit, was looking for something different. So it was just perfect timing.
Awesome.
When I first came in, I really thought that it might be a detriment not to be in the system.
Sure.
You know,
We're kind of tight-knit.
Yes. Oh, yes, ma'am. I have discovered that. I knew that. So I was a little worried about it. But actually, in retrospect, and I feel like I learned this pretty quickly on, that there was a great gift in my not being in the system, being super familiar with it, because I got to approach the role from a place of curiosity and really ask a lot of questions and really put myself in a place of listening. And I think that has been critical to our success that we've had in the last year and a half, because my first year was a lot of, again, research, talking to people, going on ride-outs, going on tours, listening more, coming up with recommendations. And then last year was really okay, let's launch some of this stuff.
So let's talk about this from a law enforcement perspective. We have roles, we have positions, we have rank, we know what we've got. Everywhere, kind of anywhere you go, the different size agencies, all these different positions. You are coming in with a new position. Mm-hmm. And we talked a little bit earlier about buzzwords. And you're the trauma-informed. And here's trauma-informed. We hear it a lot. It's one of those kind of new hot topics. So how is that rolled out to the staff? How are they made to understand? Kind of explain to us what trauma-informed means.
Yeah, great question. So I think in the most simplest form, it's understanding that being trauma-informed is just the recognition that all people are impacted by trauma.
Okay.
So data pre-pandemic told us that about 70% of people had at least one traumatic event in their lives.
Okay.
I think post-pandemic, it's easily 100%.
Sure.
All right. Okay. So that's that. What we know is people coming into the criminal justice system have had more trauma, typically 4 or more incidences of trauma. And then in the work that we do in law enforcement and corrections, officers are constantly coming in contact with trauma as well. Okay. In fact, it's estimated that an officer that works for 30 years could easily experience 900 plus traumatic events in the course of their career.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to get kind of specific for people that are just like, because trauma, when you think of a trauma center, that's someone that's hurt and bleeding. Trauma is impact, like a car accident. Give me some examples, because people might not really get what trauma means.
I think that's a great question.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to ask you,
okay,
what do you think trauma is? What's a traumatic event that people experience?
In 1992, I saw an inmate who got in a fight, and she had a razor blade brought across her face, and you could see all the way into her mouth.
So violence of any kind.
Violence.
Okay. What else?
The loss of a close friend due to suicide in this job.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
More trauma.
Mm-hmm.
How about a catastrophic event that's a natural disaster of some kind? We just had a bunch of floods in Central Texas.
Absolutely.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Death, violence, a car accident, all kinds of things like that. And certainly we know when we look at concepts like adverse childhood experiences, which is one of the concepts I'm talking about in my sessions today, understanding that we also experience things in our childhood as well. So if anyone's ever heard of this concept of ACEs, it's this massive study that was done and replicated in which we know And that was just looking at 10 different things that people could experience in their childhood, the long lasting, both mental health and physical health impact of those things. But we know that that happens as adults as well when we have traumatic events. So we come into the work already with our own stuff.
Sure.
Okay. And then we do the work and there's a lot of trauma. And then guess what? Life is hard. So
Absolutely.
It's not like it's just work, it's life as well. We lose people that we love. We find out that our child has cancer. We are in a tragic car accident and lose a limb, like any number of things as well. So as I often say, we are swimming in trauma. And the reason why it's so important is that it does impact not only our mental health, definitely there, but our physical health as well. When you look at the data in corrections in terms of officers, you see they die on an average 15 to 18 years earlier than their peers of the same age. We see the data says we lose about 25 corrections officers to suicide every year. I think that number is much higher. Sure. It's underreported because there's still so much shame there. We know that there's a high level of obesity, hypertension, diabetes, all of these things. So for me, trauma-informed simply means this. We raise the awareness that there is trauma that our officers and the people coming into our experience or into our jails are experiencing. And we take a trauma-informed approach that says, and based on that, we don't need to do assessments of everyone. What if we just approach it as though everyone in the system has trauma? What do we do about that in terms of our policies, procedures, practices, so that we minimize the long-term impact, so that our officers live longer, healthier lives, so that they can be happier at work and safer at work. And the reality is that, again, the work that we do on the inmate side, much of that is mandated to us by the nature of our work, right? But there isn't anything that's mandated on our staff side, really. And the reality is we need to be taking care of our staff and paying attention to their trauma, because when we pay attention both to the inmate trauma and the staff trauma, and we look at wellness, and how do we ensure the wellness of both of those populations, then we create that sweet spot where we lower the risk of violent incidences. We raise the retention rates for our staff, their job satisfaction. So everyone benefits when we take a trauma-informed approach. And yet, as far as I know, I've done a bunch of research, as far as we know, I am the only person in a role like this in any law enforcement corrections agency in the United States.
Wow. So what is your role? What do you do? Now we know everybody's got trauma. So now what?
Yes. So really, the bulk of my work has been to come in, and even though my title is program administrator, I often tell people, really, the work of developing programs is only effective if we change culture. So
that's no small feat right there.
That is no small. And I had to come in and really explain to folks, we're doing culture change work. It's a 3 to 5 year commitment minimum. And even then, you're not ever done if you're doing it right. You're constantly adapting to the changes. So it's a commitment in changing the culture. And that's critically important, because one of the things that we see is oftentimes you do have agencies that are developing staff wellness programs, and they have peer support teams that are full-time, all of that. That's fabulous. We want to keep doing that. But when you look at the rates of usage, you still see that you do not see the kind of buy-in you should have, largely because we're not really changing workplace culture, and we're not focused on proactive approaches. A lot of times those teams are still working from a place of responding to crisis. I mean, it makes sense. The nature of our approach to health and wellness, both mental health and physical health in general for us as a culture, tends to be a little bit on the reactive side anyway, right? We go to the doctor when and a lot of times folks go to the doctor when they're really sick, right? And so the same is true with our approach to the staff wellness. Many times we're only really addressing it by having critical incident debriefs. Hey, that's great. Like, let's keep doing that. That's important pieces. But what are we doing proactively to change the culture? To invite us to say, how are we taking really good care of ourselves, and not just the mental health, not just responding to the trauma from that perspective. That's important. And I'm a big mental health advocate because of the work I did previously. But we have to also be thinking about fitness and nutrition and shifting the culture so that we're really become focused on the wellness so that we're not approaching these things when people are already in bad shape.
Wow, that's a lot.
So it's
to
a
bite
lot.
off. It is.
So the work that I'm doing is about culture shift work.
Okay.
And one of the things that I think is really important in that is coming in and, again, being really curious, asking a lot of questions. And one of the things that we need to be doing is really getting input from staff, people that are on the front lines. By the nature of the kinds of organizations we are, paramilitary, our tendency is that everything comes from the top up to the bottom, right? It's the nature of it. So I'm sort of radical in that I'm saying, what does it look like for us to change culture and really start inviting our staff's input and inviting them to give us feedback and really listening and utilizing that feedback to help drive change? Because I often say there's wisdom in the room.
And they don't even know what they need, I think, a lot of times.
No.
Right.
And so sometimes you're helping them unflesh that. So I'll give you a perfect example of one of the things that I instituted last year for the first time was a staff wellness survey. Super simple. We use Microsoft Documents, right? Like we're a county agency. There's one of the apps is a Microsoft Forms. Super easy to create surveys on there. So we created an anonymous survey. And I had a lot of pushback on it in terms of people saying, no one's going to fill that out, blah, blah, blah. It's like, all right. It has value, though, to do it and to get that input. And then you're going to have to build the culture that says, we heard everything you said. Here's some changes that we're making. So that's what we did. Well, I will tell you that industry standard for staff wellness surveys tends to be about a 35% participation rate.
Okay.
That was my goal. I got to 30%.
Okay.
We got a 30% response rate. So I was pretty happy with that. But then what we had to do is take that information and we had to give it back to the staff and said, here's what you told us. That's one of the failures a lot of times. We asked them for input. We never let them know what they told us. That's so important in building. One of the values of being trauma informed is trustworthiness, collaboration, clarity and transparency, like really just saying, here's what you told us. And then starting to take that same information, chain of command sat with it. We did sessions where we said, let's unpack all this stuff. Some of it was hard to hear because it was anonymous. So people did say some things that it was like, ouch. Okay. But
that's a question you don't want the answer to.
That's right.
Right.
But we started to see some themes develop. And from that, for instance, one of the things that we heard is we're not as fit as we used to be pre-pandemic. We got to the pandemic and we changed a lot of stuff to address the pandemic, and then we never went back to it. We need to be more fit and healthier. So the sheriff this year launched a fitness committee, and it was made up of not leadership, although I say anybody can be a leader. It was made up of frontline folks who are leaders, who got sought out. We know that you work out. Would you like to be on this fitness committee? And so we've been gathering with them to get their input on, and they've been tasked with making recommendations to the sheriff on what we need to be doing in areas of fitness and nutrition. Wow. That's powerful. Because instead what typically happens is, again, folks up at the top make some decisions. Here's what we need to do. It gets pushed down. And the reality is, again, being trauma informed is that collaborative. It is being transparent. It is getting input from folks. And so it changes the dynamic when people feel like they've been heard. I think we live in a culture currently in which that is one of the key things for most people as humans. I'm not talking about work. I'm talking about humans, where people want and long to be heard. And so often I was encountering employees who said, I don't feel like anyone really cares what I have to say. And so shifting that so that we begin to create opportunities where we are getting the input and then we are doing something with it, it sends a message without even sending the message. It says, we heard you, here's what we're doing. So staff wellness surveys was one of the things that we did. Training, now that took a little bit longer. One of the challenges was, for me, it was like, how do we create a language that everybody understands what it means to be trauma informed? Because otherwise people are like, and when I first got there, people were like, she's just here for the inmates.
Right.
Okay. So that makes sense. So how do you change that? You have to actually train everybody. Well, if we're huge. You have 1,600 plus employees and they all work different schedules and they're on different buildings.
Right.
I would love to have done it all in person. I've been able to do a few in person, but what we created was an online training, and we required it for all staff. So at this point, 94% of our staff have gotten this basic trauma-informed training. We set it up so we were able to get TCOL credit for it. So 1,200 of them plus got Chico credit for it. It was a real simple, we used our LMS system. People could go online and do it. And all it did was create this baseline foundation. When we talk about trauma-informed, this is what it means. And at the very end of the training, we said, and here's what it means we made it clear that we weren't just talking about our inmates, but staff. We shared the ACEs assessment with them in the training, and we talked about how does this impact our work. And then at the very end, we said, here's some stuff that we're doing to address some of these things. And so we got some great feedback back. Like by and large, 90% of our staff said this was really helpful. It related to my work. They appreciated it. So the training has been really critical. The other thing that we've really done that has been really essential, in order to change culture, you really do have to start from the bottom and go up.
Sure, yeah.
So we've developed what we call the champions. So we have 3 bureaus. So every bureau has a group of champions that were nominated, not voluntold.
Okay.
That was really important.
Yeah.
Hey, we think you'd be great on this. Here's what we're looking for. And I basically told, chain of command, here's what I'm looking for. I want people who like innovation, who like change, who are, will be engaged. I want folks from all different levels of experience, males, female, like corrections, everybody. And so we gathered up 30 something plus folks. And then I meet with them on a regular basis. And it's the mix of them every time we meet, because it just depends on when they can show up. But I meet with them about every other month so that they provide input. They were some of the first that got trained. It amplifies the message. One, they get to talk about what they're hearing and what they know is coming down the pike. Then they get to also provide feedback for both me and the sheriff to say, that's not going to work, and here's why. Here's what you ought to consider doing, or love this idea. Here's what we got to go. So that you're building from there. This is the coolest thing that happened this year. So the first year was all people who didn't know. I actually had some people that said, I don't want to do that. Totally get it. It was messy at the beginning because people like structure. And what I said was, this is going to be a little messy because we're building it as we go. There's literally nobody that's doing quite this. So if you're okay with messy, this is what it's going to look like. Okay. This was the first year. In my mind, I was never going to add more folks because it's like, it's more folks to train, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
And then what happened was, I'm having people come to me now and say, I keep hearing about these champions. I want to do this. How do I be a champion? So that's been really cool.
Yeah.
But they just get to be a voice for that and provide a lot of impact. And the data shows that that's how you create change. It's called the significant minority. It's when you have this small group of people, usually it only needs to be 10 or 20% of the people that really, that's how you get to that next level of, at the beginning, you have all the innovators, the people that like change and say, yes, I love that. I'm going to try that. And then as they have that experience, they start talking about it and it grows and it builds. So all you need is that 10 to 20% to create that. So the champions were like 2.5% of all of that, right? They were super small, but I kept telling them, if you keep talking about this, you help grow that. And it's way more powerful for people to hear it from their own peers than to hear it from the sheriff or even me.
Absolutely.
So they have been a critical component in all of that, as well as building out the champions. And here's the other thing is that I recognize that I represent a very large county entity. Mm-hmm. We do have a lot of resources. The reality is that a small sheriff's office in some small county is unlikely to have the resources to say, we're going to hire a person and this is going to be their job.
Sure.
But the sheriff has made it really clear. Her goal in all of this is not just that we do the work, but that we share resources, information, support to anyone who's interested. So
she is definitely a helper. She'll answer any questions. Yeah.
She is big on that.
Yes.
So that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
Because she says, I want you to go out and tell people what we're doing. I bring business cards. I bring examples of what we're doing. And then I stand in those sessions. So I want these folks to know this as well. You need something, like you want to make some change happen and you're like, I don't know how to do it. You can contact me.
Very good.
And that's what I'm saying to folks at this conference as well, is you can reach out to me and I'm happy to provide you with examples, documents, recommendations, resources, ideas. Because honestly, at the beginning, we've done some really small things. One of the things that I'm most proud of is in September of last year, so we've been at it for a year, we launched a partnership with a local counseling center. They're called the Samaritan Center. They've been around for 50 years.
Okay.
Most of their work has been with veterans, but they've also done some work with law enforcement corrections, first responders. So I connected with them and said, hey, we just did this survey and here's what we're hearing from staff. They are worried about costs and they're worried about anonymity. They don't want everybody
Right.
knowing their stuff. It's a big issue, confidentiality, privacy. So what would it look like if we launched a program? Now, I will be clear, we've got some ongoing funding from the county to do this program. But I think it's possible in local communities to build partnerships with folks that are out in the community doing this, where you could potentially develop some kind of partnership.
Mhm.
And all we did was, I said, here's what I'm looking for. I just want to develop a program where people have access, especially if they've never tried it, so they can at least see what it's like, to therapy. And it just so happens that the Samaritan Center also does acupuncture.
Oh, okay.
So they do some other integrated medicine stuff. So they do cupping as well. So we developed and launched in September of last year a program called POWER. So Professional Officer Wellness Reset, POWR.
Okay.
Now, one of the things I'll tell you, and I tell folks when I talk to them, it's like, I'm going to be real upfront with you. I'm doing sneaky little stuff to change the culture.
Sure.
And one of the things that's super important is language. Because when you ask people, asking for help is, and I say, fill in the blank. What is it?
It's weakness.
It's weak.
Yeah.
So we have to turn that upside down. How do we turn that upside down and say, actually, we're our strongest when we get the help that we need, when we access the resources that we need, because then we get to be the best version of ourselves. Okay. So POWER, POWR, is very intentional. I wanted to launch a program that spoke of strength. So, and the name is very intentional as well, right? So professional, officer, wellness, everything's super positive. And then that last word is reset. Why reset?
Yeah. Why
Why
I was curious
is
about that word. Yeah.
Yes. Well, here's why. I think sometimes there's a couple of reasons. One is, I firmly believe that one of the barriers to a lot of people is this concept that we have around therapy, that it's like, oh, people are in therapy. Yeah, something got to do for 5 years, or come on. Well, let me be clear. One of the reasons I'm super passionate about mental health is I almost lost a daughter to suicide about 14 years ago. She was a teenager. She is well and thriving. Actually, she joined me because I was like, I'm just going to be there one night. Do you want to come? She actually joined me at this. She's an artist. She's engaged. She has she's awesome, right? But that was a really dark and difficult time for us.
Mm-hmm.
And she is alive and well and thriving because she does ongoing therapy as well as medication to support her wellness. It's a health issue. And so all those things are what help keep her well. So I don't want to dismiss that sometimes that is an ongoing need for
Sure.
people. But sometimes, especially when people have been in a critical incident at work, or they're dealing with some critical incident at home or whatever, that sometimes what you need is just a reset.
Okay.
Sometimes what you can be super valuable is to go in and do 5 or 6 sessions. And especially when we're talking about trauma, there's a wonderful modality called EMDR. Are you
Okay.
familiar with that at all?
I've heard of it.
Okay.
It's something with
Eyes.
With the
right.
eyes.
I won't even go into the acronym because everyone will forget it. I do as well. All you need to know is EMDR. It is the gold standard treatment for therapy, in therapy for trauma.
Okay.
My daughter, when she first was moving out of crisis, her therapist was one of the few in Austin that actually did EMDR. And now the large majority of therapists have been trained and certified. All the folks at Samaritan Center are also trained in EMDR. So if an officer in particular has been dealing with a chronic critical event, and they're having nightmares, they're not sleeping well, they find that the only way that they can sleep is if they drink a whole 6-pack of beer or
Sure.
any number of things, that they're having those kinds of coping skills, they recognize that they're detached, that they're all those kinds of things that say something's going on. The ability to go in and do a reset, where you really are going in and doing a few sessions that may be enough to just like, okay, it's not like I don't recall that incident anymore, but the EMDR has helped me download it and process that information so it no longer causes me the health impacts that it's currently causing me. So I think the reset was really important because I wanted to minimize the barrier to thinking, oh, this is a long-term endeavor for me. It might be, because interestingly enough, I've had some officers that have tried it and have discovered that, oh, I've got some other stuff I haven't dealt with. So they may have gone in because of a critical incident, but then they discover once that they're there, I also have these other things I've actually never dealt with.
Okay.
And so it may lead to other things that they uncover. So the
Okay.
program offers 10 free and completely anonymous sessions of therapy and or acupuncture every budget year. So for us, that's October 1st to September 30th. 10 sessions, they don't roll over, but you get 10 every year. Samaritan Center also takes our insurance, so UHC covers it. After you've used your 10 sessions, if you want to switch to insurance, you can. If you have PPO, it's $10 a session. They also do sliding scale. So if you say, I don't want to use any of my agency resources, then you can switch to that. You can do sliding scale. They also work with veterans, so they have a bunch of veteran programs. So if you're a veteran,
and a good portion of our staff is, so could probably benefit.
Absolutely. So that's one of the reasons I love working with them. They have a lot of cultural competency, and then they also have a lot of programs that oftentimes make other programs available to them. So, so what we've discovered in that last year, we have about almost 70 employees that have participated in the program, 290 plus sessions of therapy and acupuncture that they've participated in. And we continue to see those numbers grow. And it's been interesting. We've seen little spikes at times whenever we've had something happen. We lost an officer to a sudden death. It was a disease. He developed cancer. We lost him suddenly, though, within a month earlier this year. And so one of the things that we did was we were able to partner with them, do some grief forums. We did some sessions with supervisors where we talked about grief and how it can manifest itself. We really pushed out, hey, you have access to this. Boom, it piped up.
Okay.
Most recently, when we've been dealing with the floods that we had in Central Texas, and some of our officers responded to that, we also pushed it out and said, as a reminder, these are the kinds of things that can be very traumatic. Don't forget you have these resources available to you. We also saw a spike then of folks reaching out to them. But in general, we've seen a steady climb in the numbers of people accessing it.
So I want to ask you about that, because I think if I were the employee that went and you're tracking numbers, but you're not tracking people, the anonymity is still there, but you can just see the usage.
Yes,
okay.
To be clear.
Right.
In fact, oftentimes when I'm doing presentations and talking about it, I'll show them the invoice that I get. I get all the invoices to approve. And what they do is they have a system where everybody just gets a random number.
Okay.
They already had it in place because they'd been working with a police department that had some grant funding for it. So it's awesome. It's literally, well, there's 20125, and I know that they came in and got an intake, and that's all I know. And then they came in for another session, and that's all I know. So the only thing that they track for us is I ask them to track for me male and female, and then track for me whether they're doing therapy or acupuncture. Okay. So I get a spreadsheet that says, here's all the numbers of people, here's how many sessions they did, acupuncture therapy, whether they were male or female. That's all the data I collect.
I heard that there's I heard about the QR code.
Yes.
So tell me about that.
Okay. So that grew out.
It's availability. It's putting it out there where it's kind of in their face. And
Thank you for taking me back to that, because to me, that was one of the really simple things that just about anybody can do. Most of us as counties have access to a number of resources, EAPs, insurance resources, community resources. And yet what I discovered was that I had a conversation with an officer who shared with me that he'd been suicidal one evening, and that he was just overwhelmed and didn't know who to call, where to reach out to. So he held on through the night until the morning when he called HR so that he would know what the resources were. I'm so glad he's alive today.
Right.
He's an amazing person. That we come that close, that it was simply because I don't know who to call. I just thought we can never let that happen again. So all we did was take a website page, and we developed this website page. It's the sheriff's office. We just have a website page that has all of the resources on it, with hyperlinks, with phone numbers, with flyers that they can download for the different resources. And to be clear, it's just not the mental health resources. It's also health resources of all kinds. And then we just developed a simple QR code. We put that QR code on a badge so that everybody gets that badge. And so they have it with them all the time because it's on their name badge as well. And then because our folks work in the jail and don't have phones,
right,
we also then took that same QR code, that same icon, and we put it on every desktop and computer. So when you're at work, all you do is click that and it pops right up to that page. We also sent magnets home. We made magnets so now family also knows what the resources are. We've done all kinds of things with it because
accessibility is so important, and that's really smart. Yeah.
And then I made a commitment to folks. I promise you that I'm going to make sure that all the resources are on there are up to date, because I know if I'm distressed, the last thing I want is to click on a link and it's broken.
Right.
And we have external resources there as well, because I still have folks that say, I don't care what you tell me, I'm not going to reach out to anybody at our agency. Great. At the bottom of the page are resources that officers have shared with me, and I've vetted them. There's phone numbers. There's other agencies that offer, like Texas Blue Chip, that also offers some access to free counseling. My whole thing is, I don't care where folks get help or resources. I just want them to know where they are, have an easy way to reach them, because I really am committed to that. The work that we do about being trauma-informed is about three big things: saving lives. We lose way too many folks to suicide. And we know that suicide almost always is really reflective of untreated depression, anxiety, trauma. So save lives, save families. Divorce rates are super high.
Yes.
60 to 75% of our officers divorce. Yeah. And for me as a mama, I just think about those babies who lose their family connection. So saving families and saving careers. Because also what happens is that when officers, again, untreated, unmitigated, they end up getting in trouble. They're making bad decisions. All of those things happen, and they end up losing a career, and we end up losing a good officer.
Absolutely.
So how do we pay attention early on and know that sometimes the behavior we see is not a bad officer, it's somebody who's really struggling and needs a little lifeline?
What fantastic information. You know, I've been in this career a very long time, and the way we handled things, trauma-informed back in the day, was you need to just grow thick skin. Yep. And that's what we're taught to do. And so I think this culture shift it's going to be a task, but I think it's something that is attainable for anybody. It doesn't have to be a big agency.
Absolutely.
With a lot of resources.
Yep.
Thank you very much for
You're
being here.
welcome. You bet. Thank you.
I hope you guys got a snippet of what we provide here at conferences. She talked a couple of times, Karen did, about being here. And so this is a small portion of a session that was available today at our conference. So you were kind of here today. So thanks for joining us, and thank you.
This has been Jail Talk, the official podcast of the Texas Jail Association. To learn more about the Texas Jail Association, visit texasjailassociation.com.